welcome to another episode of The Recovery Scene. Today we have Sammy Huerta, and his addiction got its start around high school. Um, and I am just like I always do, I'm going to give, oh, and hey, don't forget to subscribe and like and all that stuff. But I am going to hand the floor over to Sammy, and he's going to take it away. Sammy, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the recovery scene and tell your story.
Awesome. Yes, of course. Thank you, Leslie, for asking me, and I'm glad we could, put this together. Yeah, so my name's Sammy. I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I'm an abuser of all sorts of things, right? My sobriety date's July 9th, 2018. And let's see, where do I start? So growing up, I had a pretty normal childhood. My parents are from Mexico City and they moved out over here to, build that American dream. And I have an older brother and older sister. My brother is a year and 3 months older than me, so we're super close in age. And then my sister is about like 4 years older, so we're all still pretty close in age. Close knit family. Growing up, always eating family dinners. Our parents teaching us morals and values and everything. And so yeah, that basis was good. As being a part of like a Hispanic culture, like they always wanted us to like drink with them, just to teach us how to like responsibly drink it, that like you don't need to drink to get drunk. And that's where I started taking advantage of that. And like that's where it kind of started with alcohol. And then in high school, eighth grade summer, I that's like the first time when I smoked weed, right? And from there, I think I grew up very curious and naive as to like what the world could offer. And I was just this like little kid and like filled with like insecurities, but also a lot of excitement to like take on the world. And so yeah, high school was fun and everything. Like I was good in school. Like we were actually just going through old things and stuff, and like I was doing good, like scholars with honors and everything, playing soccer all 4 years. And so I was active, athletic. But then like my sophomore junior year, I fractured the top of my right foot, and that's when I first got prescribed prescription meds. And that's where it kind of started, where I
Off
popped
to races now.
yeah, exactly. I popped one of those and I started to feel good, and it like enhanced my mood and I felt a little more comfortable with who I was. And um I'd be on the sidelines cheering the team on and the coach would be like, yeah, like we need some of Sammy's energy. And for me, I was like, oh, like cool, like they like me. And so with that, that's where it kind of started. And then the progression was like really quick for me. So it started with prescription meds, and then shortly after that, it turned into like Xanax, and then really shortly after that, it turned into like hard drugs, like.
Yeah, a lot of people, their first dealer was the
Right.
doctor, and it's a it's a thin line because you have to have pain management, for surgeries and people who break things and car accidents, but at the same time it's like this opens the door for a lot of people.
Completely. And like I think the most important thing is like how it says like take it as prescribed. Like I definitely wasn't taking it as prescribed. Um
Right.
and like at a young age I made a connection where like drugs equals fun. So if I wanted to have more fun, then I would take more drugs. And
Exactly.
I always call myself like Curious George, where like I didn't want you to tell me how like a certain drug felt like. I like wanted to experience it myself. And that was a lot of curiosity and a bunch of like me being naive, because I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And so yeah, so going through high school and all of a sudden, I'm just like smoking heroin like before my zero period class. But like the thing was is like I would get all my homework done. And so I would like fly under the radar with like teachers and like my parents. To be honest, like my parents had somewhat of an idea that I was smoking weed, because they'd be like, Sammy, like what's your eyes look a little red. And
Right. Right. Tired.
yeah, exactly. um but then I'd explain to them like, oh no, like it helps me relax and stuff, and it helps me calm down after like doing my homework and everything. And like they didn't see my grades slipping, so that was like my MO. I was like, oh, as I continue doing well in school, then I can like,
Right.
get
As
away with.
long as we're functional, everybody's fine with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like also I was like a young kid. I'm like, I'm in high school, like I'm just having fun, I'm like
Right.
enjoying
This is
life. Like,
normal.
right,
Yeah.
right. Justifying it, and like, it's not like I wanted to become like an addict or alcoholic or anything. But like I said, I was also filled with a bunch of insecurities. Like, who isn't in high school, right? We're growing up. I'm in like a white community school. I'm like this short person, always like just super negative self-talk. And like when I did drugs, it like made me more comfortable with who I was. I started feeding all these lies that like addiction tells you in the beginning.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you're more sociable, and like you can go and hang out with people, and it's not as awkward because you can just like hang out and do all this stuff.
Yeah, that is a very, very common theme among a lot of interviews is I did not feel comfortable with me and
Mhm.
drugs made that go away.
Right. Right, exactly. And it gave me this confidence I thought like I didn't have without it. And that's where like that like dependency started to form, that like mental, like, okay, like so I'll just do some of this and I'll feel better and I can go on with my day. And let's see. So go through high school, um, graduate, right? I go straight to San Francisco State because I'm like, I'm insecure. I got sweaty hands and all this stuff, and I'm like, it's too hot. I'm gonna go somewhere where it's cold. And I heard San Francisco is cold, and it was like 7 hours away from here. So I'm like, oh, that's like further away from the family, so I can get away with more stuff, not have to put Visine in my eyes and all this, right? And I'm just like, I'll go, And so I went over there with like, this just like addiction, because like my parents didn't have a clue. Like at that time, I was already, doing like fairly hard drugs, and but I was still getting class done, and it's just like that was a justification as to like no, like, and I hadn't even tried to stop yet, I was like, I'm in control, like I'm good, like I don't
Right,
have
I
to
can
worry
quit whenever
about
I
it.
want.
Right, right. It's like there's
Yeah.
that saying where like you don't really know how bad it is until you try to stop, and
Exactly.
realize you can't. And you're like, oh shoot. Um, so yeah, I'm in San Francisco, and I'm going through class, and I was spending the majority of my time in bathrooms, hopping on BART, meeting up with like random people in the not random people, but like drug dealers and stuff to get my stuff, and
Isn't it
oh,
amazing that no matter how we change locations, it's like radar. We can always just find what we need.
right.
It's wild.
Right. And like a lot of questions, like it's like, hey, Sammy, like how were you able to get into such like hard drugs like at such a young age? It's like, who were you hanging out with and all this stuff? And that's one of the things my parents said, like, who are you hanging out with? You need to stop hanging out with this and that person because they're bad for you. And I'm like, Mom, like whether they're there or not, like I'm going to seek out for it. I'm going to find it, and
Right. Right.
that's just like what people need to understand, that like sure it's like nature and nurture, like who you surround yourself with and everything, but it's also like I don't blame anyone because no one like forced me to do anything,
Right. Right. The
that's what.
addiction makes us um causes us to actively seek out to satisfy that addiction.
Right, right. And like I had to come to a place to accept that, right? Because at one point I was pointing fingers at people. Oh, if I didn't meet this for, oh, if I, all this stuff, and I was just using them as a scapegoat, until like I started working the steps and talking with my sponsor and looking really down at how everything played out and being like, yeah, like that saying, no one was putting a gun to my head saying do this. Um, so yeah, so all that stuff, all that craziness that goes along with it, carpet surfing, right? I've made like TikTok videos of it because it's just like crazy to like think about like the things we do, when we're trying to get our fix.
Right. And it's not that we laugh because it's funny, it's because we all know.
Right. You're right. If you
All
know,
know.
you know. Yeah, like most definitely. And it's awesome to be able to laugh at it now. Some people are like, "Oh my gosh, how can?" And it's like, when you've been through it and you've been in it, like, and you're able to stay on the other side of it, like just for today, then like, yeah, we get to laugh at it because it's literally a completely different life, you know?
And somebody told me, and you know what? As a matter of fact, I think it was my dad. He said, when it comes to things happening in life, you have two choices: you can laugh or you can cry. You know,
Mm,
not sometimes it's appropriate to cry, you know, but if you find the funny in stuff, and it makes it easier to handle in a way, because some of us
right.
did really bad stuff and stuff we're ashamed of and stuff we regret, and you know, it kind of eases the pain. Laughter is medicine, you know, it really is.
Yeah. It really is, and that's the thing too. It's like if I wasn't able to laugh at my like stupidity and like the complete insanity, then like I would be depressed. You know, if I just
Right.
looked at the past and just been like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this, I can't believe that happened, then like I would be a complete mess. Like that's where I find humor to help me as like a coping mechanism, you know? Like
Yes, I do, because I do the same. I think a lot of
right.
us do it. They're addicts, or recovering addicts, are hilarious. So
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. The stuff I see is amazing. It's really good. So that happens. I'm in San Francisco. After my third year, I was able to somehow pull off 3 years there in San Francisco to like one night, all night carpet surfing, right? Just like feeding all this stuff. And I finally said, like, you know what? Like, I need to call my mom and tell her, like, I'm fucked up over here. Like, I'm not just smoking weed and maybe taking a pill here or there. Like, no, like, I'm doing like this, that, and the other, you know? So I
yeah.
made that phone call and, you know, that phone call, and
Mhm.
my mom's like, "Oh, mijo, like, oh my gosh," you know, like she was all like shocked and stuff. She's like, "If you need help, then like come home," you know? And so dropped out, went back home. And here's the thing, right? Like, so then is like I knew I needed help, right? So I made that call and I went back home. But it still took me a whole nother year of like couch surfing and then like just like being there and like completely like manipulating them and using them of like to finally like get checked into a rehab. Like I remember my mom, I was laying on the couch once again another day and was like, "Mijo, like it's been a whole year since you've made that phone call asking for help. Like we should probably get you into like a detox and rehab." And I'm like, it's been a whole year? Like wow, like okay, like yeah, maybe I should try and like get that help that
Like,
I
where did the
called.
time go?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So that happened and I got I got stuck in the treatment life cycle where I do 30, 60, 90 days sober. And then since I was under my parents' insurance, I'd end up relapsing. I'd end up leaving detox because I knew that detox would accept me back or I can go into another place.
Right.
Right. And yeah, so I remember going to my first rehab. I think I did like 45 days there. And after the 45 days there, I was supposed to go to a sober living, but like somehow I just, no, I'll go back home with my parents, you know, so they're all super supportive, you know, talked my way out of it, you know. And after a couple of weeks, I ended up going back to what I was doing, you know.
Mhm.
And that's why I think it's super important to have like a solid after plan, you know, because I mean, what I realize now is just like, yeah, like it's really good to get yourself into like a rehab, like detox and a rehab and stuff. But like, definitely love you too, so brother. um, it's important to see what like having a plan after you get out of there, because like that's where like the real life situation starts to happen, real life pressure starts to happen. So we need to know like how we can like you know be able to like deal with it without
Right.
having to use or drink.
Right. Because even though we've changed, or at least started to change, nothing outside has changed. It's all
Right,
the same stuff we have to deal with.
right. It's like doesn't the world know that I just got sober? Like, why are they still tempting me? Why do the liquor stores still sell alcohol? Why is the dope man still like, you know, down the street? Like, that's like, you know, something we have to live with. And I think like acceptance really helps me out with that. So, like I said, so from 21 to 25, in and out of treatment programs, I was either loaded or in a treatment center, basically. Like I said, 30, 60, 90. I did steps 1, 2, and 3. You know, I did the whole dance, like they say, 1, 2, 3 step, and then I'd go out because I wasn't willing or ready to get honest with myself and put pen to paper and do that fourth step. You know, like
Right, right. Like
so.
I always tell people, as a recovery coach, there's no such thing as a chronic relapser. You just have to
Mm.
quit. You just haven't really quit.
Yes, exactly. Right, right. You're right. I completely agree with that. They say like it's not truly like a relapse if you haven't started honestly working the steps, you know, like you
Exactly.
just keep going back to your same coping mechanisms. So, it was a lot of pain and misery, you know. It was a lot of, I thought I didn't deserve sobriety. I wasn't willing to put in the work. I was still trying to figure it out my way. I didn't think sobriety could be fun. It was a lot of like future tripping. Like, if I decide to get sober now, like that means I'm gonna have to be sober for the rest of my life. And like, I
Right.
can't do that. I'm not ready for that. And a lot of that was like, helped me justify why I was going back out.
It is
And,
harder to get sober when you're younger. Like on one hand, I am very envious of people that
mm,
got sober in their 20s. That's fantastic. Like you got your crap together that young. That's awesome. It's amazing. And on the other hand, I think, man, that must have been hard
mm,
because those are supposed to be your quote unquote, it's normalized for them to be your party days.
right,
You're not supposed to
right.
remember your 20s or some crap like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I utilized that excuse for so long, you know, when I was 20, 21, 22. Um, and all of a sudden I was 25, you know. I was like, wait, whoa, these years are going by fast. But yeah, like when I would hear old timers tell me in meetings, like, oh, like you're 21, 22, like that's amazing. Like if you get it now and stick to it now, you're gonna have a beautiful life. You don't realize how much, misery you're gonna save yourself from. And every time people would tell me that, my mind would be like, oh, they're telling me I have so many more years that I can like fuck up and screw
Right.
up, like that's what like
Right.
my addict mind took it as. It wasn't like all this positivity they were trying to give me. My mind was like, oh, am I too young to start doing this? Like I can go back out, and like that's just like wasn't the truth, right? Because like we definitely want people to start their journey with sobriety at a younger age, so then they don't have to go through a bunch of pain and misery, because
Mhm.
it only gets worse. And it's unfortunate how stubborn we are that like we have to experience that to like a certain extent until we like get it, like, you know what, like, yeah, this is not working, and it just continues to get worse, so um okay, so I was 25 years old. I was using in this room, right? And I wasn't even truly like like I didn't say, "Hey, mom and dad, I want to go to detox." It was more my brother. At this point, so the majority of my using, I mainly smoked, and then the last year and a half it was IV use, and that's when like towards the end, my brother was like when he started seeing all the like the marks and stuff on my arms and how skinny I was and how I wasn't really making sense. He was like, "Damn, my brother is like gonna die." So like thankfully, like all my life, right? He's the one that actually set up to be like, "Yo, man, like we set you up with like a detox and stuff. Like all you need to do is say yes," and they have an open bed. And mind you, I'm 25, right? 26 is the age that you're no longer on your parents' insurance. So before this, my mom was like, as soon as I turned 25, she was like, "Mijo, there's 12 months left until you have no more insurance. What are you gonna do?
Right.
Mijo, there's 11 months left. What are you gonna do?" And she started counting it down, and it kind of was like sticking to me, like, oh shoot, like, what am I going to do? And so my brother set it up and everything. And I said, you know what? All right, fine. Like, let's do it. And like the typical story, I wanted to do one last shot before I go into detox because there's no way I can go to detox completely sober. And that one shot ended up being too much. Ended up getting rushed to the ER. Once I got to the hospital, they said I had like bacteria in my blood because I was just, like I say, like I wasn't even smart enough to do drugs properly because I was end up using the same needle when like there was like clean needles in,
Right.
and so it's just like the insanity and like the delusion of my using, and
And people don't understand it's not just the drugs that will kill a drug user, especially an IV drug user. You can literally turn your blood toxic and your body is poisoning itself, basically.
Right.
Because you're
Yeah.
shooting bacteria in your blood.
So delusional. I thought I was like this professional doctor and stuff. I knew exactly what I was doing. Like I had no clue, right? And so I ended up in the hospital. They're like, yeah, we need to transfer him to the ICU. He's pre-septic. He's got bacteria in his blood. Like, so I was, I was on the bed and stuff where it had an alarm. I couldn't even like get up to take a piss without having to radio the nurse to unlock it so I can get up so the alarm wouldn't go off, and I'm
Mhm.
25 years old, right? So I was super humbling. And yeah, they're running a bunch of like antibiotics, like bags or everything through my body. And yeah, I remember this is like the one moment of clarity that I can like definitely like be like, yeah, I understand, like this is like my moment of clarity, was when the doctor came in and he started listing all of the possible consequences that like what my life can look like. And I think he was doing it to like scare me, but also to tell me the reality of like what I was doing to myself. He's like, yeah, you might have to be on like antibiotics for the rest of your life. We might have to do open heart surgery, see like if anything's up with like your heart. And he just started listing all these things. And like that's where literally like I felt like I like got grounded back to life, to like my like 12-year-old self. And like I started crying. I just started crying like a baby, because I'm just like, oh my God, like I thought I was willing to like accept all these consequences that comes with using and all this stuff, and the chaos. And like I'm realizing like at that moment that like I'm not about this anymore. Like this is scary. Like I don't want to put up with any of this stuff anymore. Like what am I doing to my life,
Right,
Um
right.
so yeah, that was a very like big moment for me. And like when people say, so what moment really changed? But I feel like that's one of the main moments where I was like, damn, like this isn't working. Like I'm going to die, and I actually don't want to die, because usually it's like when we're so deep, we're like, yeah, we don't. I'm okay with like dying a junkie and stuff. We feel super hopeless and stuff. And like at that moment, I was like, you know what, like I want to do better with my life. So yeah, so from that ICU, I was there for like 3 days, and then got transferred to detox. And that's where I was like, I've heard it before. Go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, help others, and give sobriety a year and see how your life has changed. And I was like, all right, man, like I guess I'll give this a shot, like why not? I've already tried it so many different ways, and my way obviously doesn't work out. So that's what I
Right.
did.
Like maybe I should try somebody else's idea.
Right. Exactly. Because that's the stubbornness of like our disease and our addiction. Is just like we want to figure it out on our own, and like we just want to put the whole world on our back because like we're responsible, and for all this stuff. And it's like, you know what, I think I might need help,
Right.
so yeah, I'm in detox, do detox, go to residential, and then our residential takes us to a meeting called the Sundowners on Tuesday nights. And like that became my home group. I listened to someone share a couple of times, I related with that person, and I asked that person to be my sponsor. He's like, call me for a week straight and then we can talk about getting into the book. And I remember when he told me that, I was like, what, you want me to call you for a week? Like it's like, yeah, I want to see some accountability. And like that to me was like foreign. I'm just like, oh, I guess I need to prove myself, because I'm just used to like I'm not used to being accountable, so it was like
Right,
shocking to
right.
me.
Like I'm more of a texter.
Right, exactly. So I'm just like, okay. So I just started doing that. I started getting uncomfortable, and I was like, you know what, if this is what I have to do for like my sobriety, then like I'm gonna do it, because I know my thoughts are wrong, especially in the beginning. Like I remember being like, I don't even know what's like the truth anymore. Like I feel like everything that comes out of my mouth is a lie because of how I've been living my life. And yeah, so that's my home group. Still is my home group. Have the same sponsor. We started working the steps, and I started to get this relief, which was like amazing to me. I remember like working the first step with him, and then like I went to the bathroom, and I remember like smiling, like just for a little bit, like in the bathroom at the mirror. I was like, wow, like you're doing it, like
Hey,
you're
it's a good
like working
feeling.
on step one right now. It's just like like that relief, that little like window of relief was like, okay, I guess I'll keep doing this, you know? Um, and had to do things differently. The thing about like going in and out of treatment centers and trying to work the steps and everything, it's like I was able to learn, and also broke it down with my sponsor, like a routine of like what my go-to was, which was the typical go to treatment, get a job, get the girlfriend, get the car, go back out, So we had to do things differently. I told him that, and I didn't tell him that. I told him my experience. He's like, okay, so maybe you should probably go to sober living. I went to sober living for 4 or 5 months until I was allowed back home, because the family didn't want me to come back home so quickly because they knew what would happen. And
Yeah, our families start to wise up. They
yes,
go through the process. People don't realize your family goes through this process too. They go through their own process.
they do.
Yeah, they learn.
They do. For sure. I remember like my parents at first used to think that like, oh, like we'll send him to a detox rehab center and then he'll come back out cured,
Right,
like he'll
right.
be good. We'll send him to rehab, he'll be good. And once the first couple of tries didn't happen, they're like, oh, maybe this isn't as easy, or they began to see that it was a little more complex than that. My dad was very just like, what's good, what's bad, stop doing bad, and like once he started seeing how much I was struggling or how complex it was, he was like, oh, okay, like there might be a little more to this, but yeah. So where was I at? Start working the steps. I don't know.
You're
Okay,
at
yeah.
a
So
living house. You're at
sober
a
living house. I didn't get a job until I was 4 months sober. Because I was scared of getting that job, because I knew as soon as I started working, I'd be focused more on that, and I'd be focused more on getting that paycheck and stuff. So I waited 4 months, and like one of the main things that I tell myself, and I've heard a lot, is just trust the process, be patient. And till this day, like most people know, like even in my lives, like I will always say that, like, trust the process, trust the process, trust the process, because we like instant gratification, and like that's not how like sobriety or recovery works, which is why I would like go back out so often, because I wasn't willing to just like go at the pace that things are supposed to.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so didn't get a job until I was 4 months sober and clean. And when I started getting my paychecks, I was still nervous about money. I was like, I can't have money in my pocket, like, and I was just being truthful with my sponsor and stuff. And he's like, oh, simple solution, deposit your paychecks and transfer them to your parents, like everything, simple solution. I'm like, ah, okay, I'll do that, So I started to do that. And of course, I wanted to go back to school. The thing is, like, when I get into like first couple of weeks in sobriety, I want to eat the whole world up and try and make up all the years that I was like wasting in like a manner of like a week,
Right.
and that's what I
Right. I
think.
want to do everything right now.
That's what I think we do, is like we just try and eat too much from our plate. And I was like, I'm gonna go back to school, and like there's so many times that I would sign up for classes, and within 2 weeks I would withdraw and try to get the money back, because I knew I wasn't ready to go back, and all that stuff. So this time around I was like doing the same thing. I was like, I want to go back to school and stuff, and like my case manager was like, listen, do you even have money to pay for your semester? No. What about books? No. Did you even start thinking about the professors and about tests and the pressure of all that, and how are you going to get to school? And I'm just like, yeah. He's like, yeah, maybe you should take another semester off, get a job, save up some money, so then you at least have that part, already, like you won't have to worry about financially paying for your semester, and then you'll be able to tackle on school with a little clear minded. I'm like, I wanted to go back to school, but I'm like, okay, all right, I'll do what you say, and I did that. So this time around, the difference with like my sobriety now and like in the past, where I would just get little stints of it, is like what they say, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, taking a lot of other people's suggestions that have walked the path before me.
Right.
um
Right.
my initial thought of how to handle a situation is usually skewed and like probably wrong. So I needed to call others and run it by them in order to really see what the best option was, because I react, I don't respond, and that's what like the program has taught me, is how to like be able to respond, to a situation instead of like automatically be like, no, but we need to do this, we need to do it. Like, no, let's like put it pen to paper, write out the pros and cons list and see what we can do about this situation. And that's why I'm super vocal about getting a sober network and having phone numbers and people that you can call, to run things by, because in the beginning I had no clue how to live a life sober, and I needed help. And I was willing to ask for that help and actually listen and put it into action, right? Because it's one thing of like people reaching out and being like, I need help, like I need sobriety and stuff, but then like I wouldn't do anything about it,
Right.
like the
Right.
next day I just go back to doing what I was normally doing. And like that's why it wouldn't work, because I wouldn't like implement the things that people were telling me to do. So
Right. Because it
it,
is work. It's work. It
yeah,
requires effort, you know.
right, definitely. That's like the main thing. So yeah, I don't know, like sobriety's freaking awesome.
How
The
long do
whole
you have
like
now?
a little over 2.5 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
it's
fantastic.
it's crazy to think, and to be able to see how my life has changed because of sobriety. I like get to understand why people say is like trust the process, don't leave before the miracle happens, like just like get through those tough nights, when you want to use play the tape forward, because like you'll be able to like more will be revealed, and like now I get like that natural dopamine from doing activities, and like being like, wow, like this feels a lot better being able to get this natural high from like going to surf than like trying to find it in a bag.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy how all of a sudden you come to that realization. Like for me, oh, I took the kids to the movies. That was
Mm,
awesome. Like,
right.
really? I think that's awesome. That's great. It is like people can't stand cliches, but especially in recovery, they are cliches for a reason, because this is what people who went through all this before us discovered, and so they're only cliches because they're said over and over and over and over. But it's because they're absolutely true. Now, did you end up going back to school?
Yes, I did go back to school. I was able to graduate with my BA in marketing. I just graduated this last semester.
Very
So,
cool. Well done.
yes, super exciting because, yeah, there's a point where I was like, oh, no, I'm not even going to finish it. It's whatever, blah, blah, blah. You don't need a degree anymore, and it's like, to a certain extent, that's true, but it's also like, also to prove like it's like, what, like I was like 80% done, like let's go back, finish it, and like let's get after it. So
Exactly, especially when you're that close.
right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great. And that's another thing is you've got to have goals, even if they start little, even if it's just I'm going to be, sober for today, and then I'm going to be sober for, one day at a time, and then you move on. But a life without goals,
Mm,
your only goal is going to become to get high,
right. Right.
So yeah, that's important. That really is important.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that's helped with my sobriety is trying out new things, figuring out what works, keeping it like spicing it up. Like if our sobriety isn't fun, then like I'm not going to stay sober. And like that's not going to say that like my sobriety journey has always been fun, because like life is life, and there's ups and downs, and like they say, like it gets worse before it gets better, because we used to cope with like drugs and alcohol to numb our feelings, and all of a sudden we're not doing that anymore, and like we're starting to feel all these feelings. Like of course we're going to be awkward, anxious, sweaty hands, I don't know how to deal with this, or I'm not going to go up to someone and shake the, like of course we have to go through those uncomfortable situations to realize like, what, like it's not as bad, and like you begin to get comfortable with it. So yeah, hobbies: photography, learned how to surf. I've grown up in Huntington Beach my whole life, never have gone surfing until I got sober. So that was like a super like big day for me when I started to go out, and like catch a wave, and just like, wow, this is like amazing, hang out with friends. Music, writing, like there's just so many things. Exercising's huge. Like just like getting outside, to like help us be active and like realize like there's so much more to life than just like what we were used to in the past, which was for me usually just stuck in my room, talking to no one. No one wanted to hang out with me, just a bunch of like chaos. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost like, not that I'm telling anyone, hey, you should go through addiction so you can figure this out. But I've noticed for a lot of us who are in recovery, we tend to grab onto life.
mm,
It's like because of our addiction, we learned how to live,
yes,
how we almost enjoy life a little more.
right. we
Yeah,
hold I feel like we get to hold a little more value, right? Like here we were completely hopeless. I was literally ready to die a junkie. I didn't want my family to do nothing with me. I wanted them to stop caring about me because I was like, this is the type of life I'm going to live and I don't want to continue hurting you guys. So just like forget about me so I can continue doing my thing. Um, Not caring about any of that stuff. And like now here I am saying like, oh, family time's like awesome, and like I get to see my little nephew grow up and there's like that kind of stuff coming out of my mouth is just like, what? I didn't give a
right.
shit about any of
Like,
that,
you guys
So
want
it's
to
just
play
like,
giant checkers? I'm in.
right, right. And I think that's what like people who haven't started their journey with sobriety are just like, how am I gonna be content with life thinking about like raising someone or just going down to the beach and walking? Like that sounds so boring. And like yes, it does sound boring in the beginning. And like I remember being in treatment and they took us to Boomers and playing mini golf and I'm like, this is so lame. Like I'm not getting any happiness from this. And it's just like that's normal. We're trying to relearn how to live again. And but now like I could go and like do something and like enjoy it, which is like something that I think is very crucial to like hopefully help people realize that like in the beginning those thoughts like you think you're not going to enjoy life and like you don't think you're going to be able to find happiness in certain things, but if you stay sober long enough and put in the work you'll start to feel that happiness and become like grateful for just being able to have another chance at life.
Exactly, exactly. Sammy, again, thank you so much, for just being here and being open
Yeah,
and sharing your story. It's a good story.
thank
It's a
you,
story
thank
of
you so much, Leslie.
hope and redemption, and it's a not everybody comes from the broken home. I didn't, and
Right,
it's just another way of showing that addiction doesn't care where you come from. It doesn't care if you came from a broken home. It doesn't care if you have loving parents. It doesn't care if you're close with
right.
your siblings or you hate them. It's so somebody is going to relate to that. I used to think in meetings that I couldn't relate because I was like the only one in there who was never, tricking.
Right,
But that didn't matter because there were other people in there who, you know, maybe that's what they did, but they also came from the same background as me. And then we all had that one thing in common is we were all addicts who were looking for some kind of recovery, you know.
right.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for asking me, to share my story, and I'm glad to do it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us for this episode of The Recovery Scene. Remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.